But you also say, I guess you were independent before you moved out, weren't you, Mum? Because you were, yes, explain.
Yeah, I was working, even before I was 19, but I was working with your grandparents before 19, but then they sold their business and I had a job from when I was 19. In fact, most of the time I had 2 jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And I was financially independent at that point. My parents being Scandinavian, I would help out paying the bills, the household bills, and generally have meals together, at least one meal a day, but in and out, live practically independent, could do as I wish.
Because that's one thing I would like to say is that just because you haven't moved out doesn't mean you're not independent, right?
Right.
Because I feel like that's quite an old-fashioned way to think about it. Of if you haven't moved out, then you're not independent. You're still leeching off of your parents.
I think that's also a sign of the times, and the fact that I think back in the 1970s, independence actually meant moving out, getting married, having a job, and buying your own house. Nowadays, independence is mostly a personal financial independence, rather than that whole, the whole package, right?
Yeah.
So you might be financially independent but still living with your parents, or even you might be mature enough to have a relationship with your parents, which I think was your case, trusting enough, by which you can have your independence even before you're even close to being able to leave the house or to be financially independent, right? And I think that was your case. You were always living with us till you graduated, and yet I think from the time you were maybe 15 and a half, we pretty much left you to your own devices. You made your own decisions.
That sounds like we sort of.
No, but we didn't question you, right? You know what I mean? It's like
we let you make your own decisions.
Exactly. You were in the house, and you, of course, you depended on us, and we had dinner together. We always do when you're here at home. But you were in control of your own life. You decided what GCSEs you took. You decided what A levels you took. You decided what your future was going to be, and the only permission you had to ask from us was when you needed our money, to buy games or whatever it was, right? I think that's what I mean.
Yeah.
And of course, once you got old enough to go out with your friends and to do your things, you didn't ask us for permission to go out. You just said, I'm going out this weekend, right?
Yeah.
And as long as you kept in touch while you were out, we didn't really care what time you got back, right? That's what I mean by independence. There's a lot of families who don't do that, don't allow that. I mean, you might know from your friends, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Whose parents are more controlling or more protective. Not controlling, protective I think is the better word. And those children are treated like children till much later. Having said that, I've seen a cool statistic here which says psychologists and neuroscientists now suggest that adolescence technically lasts until the age of 25.
Adolescence?
Yeah.
Isn't adolescence before?
It's like your teenage
years, yeah. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for impulse control and planning, is not fully developed until the mid-20s. Does that have an influence in independence? I don't know, but
I don't know.
There might be something there. I know that when I was 25, I was not even close to, say, starting a family, for instance, or getting married or anything like that. I was a dweeb. I was still experimenting. I was still living life. I wasn't, oh my God, or even buying a house for that matter. However, I was alone.
Yeah,
most of my peers were dying to take that step already.
Yeah, because for example, for me, right now, I don't live with you guys anymore. Or for half of the year, I don't live with you guys, I should say, because the other half I do during holidays, summer, Christmas, I stay here and I live with you guys here. But the other half, I'm in Ireland, I'm by myself, I do my own shopping, I cook for myself, I do my own laundry, I wash my own dishes. So obviously, in that sense, I'm independent, but I am not financially independent at all yet, hopefully.
And do you feel independent? Do you feel like you're in control of your own life?
I feel like I'm in control of my own life, but in certain situations, I guess, in a sense. Because obviously I'm still in school, so in school, in university. I still go to classes and stuff, and I still have to do homework and show up to.
Well, but that's routine.
Exams.
I mean, once
Just
you
like when you
finish,
get a job, you still have
exactly
to. You
the
have
same.
to go to work. You have a certain time amount
Yeah,
of
exactly,
hours you
but-
have to work. Or
But I feel like in a job, it's easier to be like have more control because you apply to the. Obviously, I'll just be applying to everything, so it's different. But you want to go to that job, and if you're not happy with that job, then you can try to search for something else. But right now I could do that, but it would be a major setback in a way, you know. And also financially, we can't really do that right now because university is also expensive. So, you know, right now I'm kind of, thankfully I like what I'm doing. So, I know it
I
sounds
was
like,
getting worried there. I was going to say, do you want to
So you want to change?
no.
something you
hang on,
haven't told us?
we're changing the subject of this podcast.